And what that enables is the automation of automation, right? And so the people who were writing software, particularly at the lower end, unless you're doing these advanced things, they're gone, right? The people that
because the software's writing itself.
It's doing itself, right? It's just math.
What if I told you that the way that AI is portrayed in popular media by billionaires and big tech CEOs was at best over-exaggerated or misinformed, but more than likely deceptive and exploitative? What if I told you that companies involved in AI research and or the sale of AI products, as well as investors who are drawn to emerging technologies like AI, stand to benefit from this type of exploitation since it can lead to higher funding, increased sales, and potential for higher returns, and that your perception of AI collectively contributes to the pendulum shifting either for or against these billionaires and large tech corporations? The difficulty with presenting this type of claim is that it requires the audience to have some level of understanding of the way generative AI works to truly grasp the nuance in the language used by these billionaires and big tech CEOs.
I think this year, probably in 2025, we at Meta, as well as the other companies that are basically working on this, are going to have an AI that can effectively be a sort of mid-level engineer that you have at your company that can write code. And once you have that, then in the beginning it'll be really expensive to run, and then you can get it to be more efficient, and then over time we'll get to the point where a lot of the code in our apps and including the AI that we generate is actually going to be built by AI engineers instead of people engineers. But I don't know.
With that in mind, asking you, the viewer, to understand what I'm about to tell you would be unreasonable without me first giving you some general understanding of what generative AI is and how it works. Generative AI, in simple terms, is this. It's a type of artificial intelligence that can create new things given some input. For example, ChatGPT can write news stories, generate answers to questions, which in turn leads to it being able to have conversations, etc. A good contrast to generative AI is discriminative AI. For example, an AI that can identify objects in a picture such as cat, dog, etc. Generative AI is what you're used to, what you most likely make use of on a regular basis. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at something that Sam Altman recently said in an interview.
What are you excited about in 2025? What's to come?
AGI?
Yeah.
Excited for that. What am I excited for? Growing a kid. I'm more excited for that than anything I've ever been.
Now, for those of you that didn't understand, AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which is an AI that matches or surpasses human cognitive capabilities across a wide range of cognitive tasks.
How did you define AGI back then, and has your definition changed?
Yeah, I didn't have a particularly precise definition at the beginning. It was really just an idea of systems that would just be far more general. So rather than just playing Go or chess or something, rather they'd actually be able to do many, many different things. The definition I use now is that it's a system that can do all the cognitive kinds of tasks that people can do, possibly more, but at least it can do the sorts of cognitive tasks that people can typically do.
Now, Sam Altman is going to try and gaslight you into thinking that the term AGI is not well defined.
Yeah, so we realized that AGI had become this badly overloaded word, and people meant all kinds of different things, and we tried to just say, okay, here's our best guess roughly of the order of things. I used to love to speculate on that question. I have realized since that I think it's very poorly formed, and that people use extremely different definitions for what AGI is.
There is wide uncertainty, and there's also different definitions of what superintelligence is.
and I'm going to get into why I think he's doing this soon, but for now, understand that it is in their best interest that the term AGI be defined by them. Another thing that you need to understand is that Sam Altman had previously had an understanding of the term AGI as something that was seemingly out of reach at that particular time of his understanding.
And one of the things that worked really well in retrospect was we said from the very beginning we were going to go after AGI at a time when in the field you weren't allowed to say that because that just seemed impossibly crazy and, you know, borderline irresponsible to
So
talk
that
about.
got his attention immediately.
It got all of the good young people's attention and the derision, whatever that word is, of the mediocre old people. And I felt like somehow that was like a really good sign.
So what Sam Altman's actually trying to do is he's trying to bring the term within reach or closer to them instead of moving further in the direction of the term as it is actually defined. And the reasoning for this is simple. It's because they're actually nowhere near achieving AGI as it is actually defined. So he's essentially trying to rig the definition of the term AGI in his favor, allegedly.
You often say that AGI is not coming soon, meaning like not this year, not the next few years, potentially farther away. What's your basic intuition behind that?
Before we get this to work, properly, it's going to take a while. So, and before we get all those things to work together, and then on top of this, have systems that can learn like hierarchical planning, hierarchical representations, systems that can be configured for a lot of different situations at hands, the way the human brain can. All of this is going to take at least a decade, and probably much more, because there are a lot of problems that we're not seeing right now, that we have not encountered. And so we don't know if there is an easy solution within this framework.
Now, why they might want to do this should be obvious, but if you still don't get it, let me just say it. If a company is able to say that they've achieved AGI, investors whom are predominantly normies, without much knowledge of this stuff beyond some surface level understanding, are going to assume he's talking about the actual definition of AGI, which you can find on Wikipedia, etc. So from the investor perspective, or the normie perspective, we will have reached a new frontier in AI development, when in reality what we've reached is the less impressive AGI as defined by Sam Altman. The reality is generative AI in its current state is actually nowhere near AGI, and I can pretty much guarantee that AGI is not happening in 2025. But who the hell am I? You need to decide this for yourself. And to enable you to do that, we first need to dive a bit deeper with our understanding of generative AIs like GPT. One of the key mechanisms that underlies the generative nature of AI models like GPT is next token prediction. Next token prediction, in very simple terms, works like this. Imagine we ask ChatGPT a question, and we'll ask a question that on the surface seems like it would require some general level of intelligence to understand and answer, but under the hood you'll find that it's not actually intelligence at all, it's just statistics. So what happens is, this question is broken down into tokens or units. These tokens can be words, parts of words, or even individual characters. And the meaning of each individual token can be understood by the AI, but not in the same way that humans understand the meanings of words. The AI basically analyzes the relationship of a token to other tokens. You see, generative AIs like ChatGPT are trained on massive amounts of text data from books, websites, articles, and other sources. And from this data, they're able to establish patterns in how tokens or words are used in context. But the understanding of these patterns isn't intelligence in a human sense. They're literally just stored on some server or servers. So the training might look like this. We give the AI part of a sentence and ask it to guess the missing word or the next token. Now this point is very important. It's going to use statistics to guess the next token. So it's essentially going to calculate the next token. And if it guesses wrong, its internals and or patterns will be adjusted to understand that that word was a wrong guess in this context. And those updated internals and or patterns are then used in the next statistical calculation or guess. And as you can imagine, when it guesses right, its internals and or patterns will again be adjusted to understand that that guess was correct, which will impact future statistical calculations or guesses. And little by little, that's basically what's happening when you ask ChatGPT a question. Now, without going too deep down the technical rabbit hole, you should at this point see a fundamental difference in the way that generative AI understands the meaning of words and the way that you, a human, understand the meaning of words. It's quite simple, really. Generative AI understands words statistically. You, as a human, understand words through experience, perception, and emotion. You connect words to personal memories, sensory experiences, and feelings. In short, your understanding comes from lived experiences. Generative AI's understanding is basically just a calculator. So for us to see AGI in the year 2025, like Sam Altman is claiming, and I'm talking about the true definition of AGI, not his made-up definition to suit his agenda, it would mean that generative AI would need to evolve from what is essentially an advanced calculator for language to something that can develop a consciousness or awareness, something that can learn in real time instead of needing to be trained on huge amounts of data requiring massive compute resources, something that can develop deep comprehension and the ability to reason across diverse topics. This guy wants us to believe that this very narrowly scoped next token prediction technology is going to evolve into AGI within this year? It's fucking cap.
I challenge the claim that next token prediction cannot surpass human performance. It looks like on the surface it cannot. It looks on the surface, if you just learn to imitate, to predict what people do, it means that you can only copy people. But here is a counter argument for why it might not be quite so if your base neural net is smart enough. What does it mean to predict the next token well enough? It's a deeper question than it seems. Predicting the next token well means that you understand the underlying reality that led to the creation of that token. It's not statistics, like it is statistics, but what is statistics? In order to understand those statistics, to compress them, you need to understand what is it about the world that creates those statistics.
This is equivalent to arguing that a basic calculator, and in this example I'm talking about a regular calculator, not generative AI, the glorified language calculator. What he's saying is equivalent to saying that in order for a basic calculator to do arithmetic, the calculator needs to understand what it is about the world that creates the arithmetic. So in other words, since next token prediction is capable of guessing the next token using statistics, it has to mean that the AI has some underlying understanding of the world. When the reality is, a calculator doesn't need to know anything about the world to tell you what 1 + 1 is. Any nerd that's developed a basic calculator app in college can tell you this. And this is coming from the former chief scientist of OpenAI. Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I presented to you this information without giving you any insight into the other side. The other side being those that do believe that AGI is coming in the very, very near future. 2025, for example. But the problem is, there aren't really any good arguments in favor of this miracle actually happening aside from just keep giving her more data. Eventually, that's going to produce a super intelligence.
If you keep feeding these things enough data and enough processing cycles, they'll eventually evolve an entire internal world model, right? And they'll have like a complete understanding of physics.
On the contrary, there's plenty of information out there claiming that public data has been pretty much tapped, and the only realistic next source of data is private data. Yes, you heard that correctly. Private data. And that's not even the only thing. Aside from the issues of data scarcity, there's also lots of talk about generative AI just hitting a wall. That is, even if we did have more data, we wouldn't see as drastic of an improvement that we were able to see with previous iterations.
There's some concern that artificial intelligence research and development has hit a wall, and that we need a radically different approach to achieve the breakthroughs that we were hoping for. Would you agree with that?
Not at all. I think if you look at the landmark result in the field each year for the past, say, 4 years, it's incredibly more impressive every year. It wasn't that long ago we couldn't even beat Go with AI. And now we can beat incredibly sophisticated video games with hundreds of thousands of actions taken with thousands of options at each step. And we have made algorithmic progress each year. We've also made incredible hardware progress. every year we can use 10 times more compute power per deep learning model. It's just the rate of progress is incredible, and that's going to continue.
And with all of this, we're still supposed to believe that we'll see AGI within this year. It's clear that these people either think we're idiots, or they're idiots themselves, or they have an agenda.
Okay, so what are we supposed to think? There's been a whole bunch of headlines in the past couple of weeks where people have talked actually about maybe that the scaling laws of AI actually are slowing down. And you put out this, I don't know if it was cryptic or it was very direct. You put out a tweet where you wrote, "There is no wall."
I don't see how it could be any less cryptic than that. Like, that was an attempt not to be cryptic at all and say, hey, this is going to keep going. In fact, hopefully this will put it to rest, at least for a while. I've always been struck by how much people love to speculate on, is there a wall? Is scaling going to keep going? And like, rather than just like look at the curve of progress and say, maybe I shouldn't bet against an exponential like that. In any case, we have a bunch of new great stuff. So we're doing this kind of fun thing for the holidays. We're doing 12 days of OpenAI starting tomorrow. But we're going to launch, we'll either launch something or do a demo every day for the next like 12 weekdays. And without saying too much about the thing for tomorrow, it is continued progress.
At this point, you might be wondering what these billionaires and large companies have to gain from the AI hype. And like most deceit, the answer is right there, in plain sight. The answer is right in front of you.
So, just to put a fine point on it, you try not to think about whether or not we're in a bubble, but you think we could be in a bubble right now.
I mean, I think we are. I think some valuations are too high. I think some are too low. I think that if interest rates go up a lot, I think that probably has some ripple effect, I hope, on equity valuations. But I think I think it's like not that binary of a question. It feels more likely to be true than it was in 2015. But again, like, there's still a lot of startups that I put a lot of money into at current valuations, so I just try not to, I'm not smart enough to figure that out.
According to a New York Times article, in the year 2023, OpenAI raised $10 billion. And just 18 months later, the company had already burned through most of that money. So it had to go on and raise an additional 6.6 billion more and arrange to borrow an additional 4 billion. It's pretty clear that investors are what keep this company afloat. Without investors, this company in particular would not be able to survive. Now I'm going to ask you a very simple question. If you were an investor, would you be more willing to invest in a company that you thought would for sure alter the course of history within the next 2 to 3 years? Or would you be more willing to invest in a company that could potentially maybe alter the course of history in the next 10 to 15 years? Now let's change hats for a second. Imagine you're the CEO of this company instead of a potential investor. You understand that your company's original investors have expectations of groundbreaking changes within a 2 to 4 year window. But you also understand that the technology isn't scaling the way that you'd originally predicted. So when starry-eyed enthusiasts and investors ask you when you expect to see AGI, what do you tell them? You tell them the bubble is about to burst.